Good morning and welcome to our live broadcast of Money in the Bank with Frank. Today we're going to be talking about holiday financial hacks. And we have as a first-time guest, hopefully many-time guest, Amy Cushner, my wife. And we figured that this is the perfect time of the year to talk a little bit about holiday finances. And
Yeah, this is a special edition, Frank, because not often do I come in studio, but this topic is very pertinent to relationships this time of the year. So I wanted to talk to Frank about saving for the holidays. How do you, at this time, it is right now December 21st, so the countdown is on. How do you ensure that you have money to spend on the holidays?
now I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to say that Amy has a budget and sticks to it religiously. And why don't you tell us how you have done it
The
over the
interviewer
year?
becomes the interviewee. So, someone said to me many, many years ago, if you just save $50 per week, think about just putting away $50 per week. You never think about it, but make it a dedicated thing over 52 weeks. You will have money just all of a sudden appear at Christmas time, but you've got to discipline yourself to do it. So 10 years ago, I started doing that as my financial portfolio increased a little bit more. It became more than just $50 a week. It was $60 and then $75, so that by the time the holidays come around, I could easily be sitting on some cash of $3,000 ready to spend on loved ones. What's really nice about doing that is you get a perspective of your accounting. And the perspective is this: you think you need that $50 to be part of your biweekly spending, but when you put it into a special account, you realize you actually already have this.
So can I redirect that for a second? So really what you're saying for Christmas is something that people do and should do for everything, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You're
Oh,
setting up a
absolutely.
budget. It doesn't have to be Christmas. In our case, it's Christmas, right? So you know
Right.
exactly how much
Right.
you have. Now, do you always spend all of it?
No. Good question, Frank Cushner. I do not always spend all of it. But also, to your point, that distribution each week could be $20 towards a car budget for that time in which you're going to need tires. And you may need tires once every 2 years or once every, is it average about 15,000 miles?
So do you budget a specific number for the year? So let's say you don't spend it all this year and you've got money left over. Will you still say, I want to save this much and I only need to get this much per week? Or do you just focus on a different goal
Now,
once you
let's
get
be
to a certain
clear.
level?
Let's be clear. If there's money left over, it will be spent. Once I've distributed all of the funds towards other people's gifts, it's like Merry Christmas, Amy. And I get to buy myself some presents with that money. Some of those things on the list that may not have gotten checked off on the Christmas list.
So that actually brings up a good point. So really, we were talking also expectations about Christmas. Like it may mean more to you than it does to me or vice versa. So in that spirit of giving, what are some expectation, and not just me, but
Yeah.
in the past with other relationships or thoughts, like Christmas means a tremendous amount to you and your family. I grew up in a family where it didn't mean as much.
Correct.
And so I'm starting to find the joy and learning the Christmas spirit, other than my nieces and nephews who always got anything they wanted. But really, from an expectation point of view on the, not just the fiscal side, how do you handle that? What's your thought process on that?
Well, let's go ahead and just kind of put a flashlight or highlight on one of the words you said, which is joy. The whole premise behind us talking today is this is the most stressful time of the year. It's year end for many, many companies. So there's a lot of year end stuff that you, as a person, not just a father, a mother, a sibling, a spouse, but you as an employee are doing. So there's stress with that. And then if all of a sudden there's budgeting that didn't correlate to being ready to spend this time of the year, that's a stress, right? So
All I'm thinking about is Christmas vacation right now.
I know. So the joy of the season is missing if you didn't have that preemptive budget. So already take the advice, $50 a week, you'll love it. But then it's the expectation of how much do we spend on each other, or how much do we spend on my family's gifts and your family's gifts? There's a lot of spending going on. And as we all know, some of those tipping points that lead to dissatisfaction in a marriage, one of them is money and the way money is distributed, right? So I am a talker. Don't know if you could see that, but part of me is defining the expectations. And one of those things that we have set up really well in our marriage is define the expectation before it happens. Otherwise, a narrative begins to be established of, I expect Frank to spend this much money, or I expect him not to spend this much money on XYZ. So he gets welcomed into my family 3 years ago and sees Christmas on steroids. He gets to see that when we say we do stockings, our stockings on average cost about $150 per person, and there's 4 members in my family. And then you get gifts on top of that. So there was a lot of expectation discussion that we had to have there.
Right now, so let's talk back to the budgeting part of the equation again for a second. And my question really is, well, not really, but my question is, when you're budgeting for Christmas, is there a overall number for everybody? Do you like how pointed are you in that? Is it a total Christmas budget and then you can kind of parcel it out from there? Or are you so serious that you're like, okay, I want to make sure I spend this much for each person?
You know, it really depends on who ticked me off that year, because their budget just gets minimized immediately. I'm teasing. No, it is. You know, you put general guidelines around it, you know, for family members versus a spouse versus what you're going to spend from a company standpoint of coworkers that you work with. The easiest way to have some of those conversations is to start them more often in January. Then this is not the time of year to have those conversations. So if you're kind of in the throes of it right now, you can back it up and try to go there. But those conversations are more preemptive starting in about January, February. What are we looking at as far as establishing a budget for the year? And then how would you plan for that? Frank has his budget. I have mine. Money spent on my family comes through the budget that I've created whenever it comes to stockings, and anything above that Frank wants to invest with my family, hey, go for it. But there's not the expectation that he buys for my family.
So one of the things that I find interesting, the difference in the way that you approach a holiday or Christmas versus the way that I approach it is I really do give just straight out of joy. Like if I like somebody or tipping somebody,
True.
whatever it is, there's no transactional. It's not transactional at all. Do you think of yours more transactional? Like XYZ person gave me this last year. I need to make sure that I make up for it or do that. Like how do you see Christmas? Is it more commercial? Is it more transactional? Is it more joy related?
Yeah. I would be ignorant to say there's not a transactional point to it, because the surprise gift you get from someone that you didn't give them a gift makes you think, oh no, I didn't realize our relationship was there. Now that person could be giving it in a non-transactional way, but it does stick with you. So there is some transactional nature to it, but those are more with the extended or ancillary people in your life. With your family members, it truly should be about the joy. The joy, though, I will say from a budgeting standpoint, you have got to keep within your budget. You really do need to keep within your budget, because if spending at an emotional capacity, you're going to wind up overspending and then being in the tenuous situation whenever, if it's credit that comes in, or a conversation all of a sudden has to take place, like, I don't understand why this much was spent on this person versus that. That's when, if you're spending on emotion, you're going to get yourself in trouble, Frankie. But the most important part of this talk today is really spouse to spouse. how would you set the expectation of what we should spend on each other this year? Should it be fair and equitable, or should it come down to, I don't know, average income? And you take a percentage. Yeah, go there. I'm in education. Let's take a percentage of my salary, a percentage of yours, and then see, should we spend equally, like 500 to 500, or should it be based on income status or based on how much you love me?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go with the safe.
What quagmire do you want to jump into here?
I'm going safe, and I'm going to say if Amy wants a pony, Amy gets a pony.
No, but to be fair, this is what causes stress to you. You think you've spent
without a doubt. My expectation is that I'm just going to get you something that I absolutely adore. I think you'll adore, and that's going to get me into trouble one day because you're not going to adore it, and then you're going to be angry and bitter about it. But I'm just putting that out there ahead of time, that the way that I think about it is not transactional at all. I don't actually put a number on it. I don't know what I would spend. I would spend whatever didn't hurt. Right?
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is to do what I can when I can. And unlike you who budgets, there's going to be lean years, there are going to be strong years. But I think overall, I hope you're happy.
Okay, so right there in that statement, that's all I needed to know. So as a spouse to know that what's wrapped in that gift is organic to you, the joy you felt in thinking this is something that I'd really find value in, because that's a thoughtful commodity right there. That's something thoughtful that you can't even put a dollar amount on. And you need to feel safe and secure in the relationship that it's going to be more than like a bobby pin. Oh, I really thought you'd love a bobby pin. No, you know what I'm saying? That it would be something that doesn't necessarily have a monetary value. The value is in the thoughtfulness that came behind it. And I can go with that any day of the week, but you have to have that conversation first. You really, really have to have that conversation first. We're going to find a movie clip of where this goes awry, of where one person can't wait for the other person to unwrap it, and then the look of sheer disappointment. Every
Christmas movie has that scene.
It does. But it truly is. It's part of human psyche. We create narratives, and the narrative in our head could be, this is going to be the most beautiful Christmas because I bought him or I bought for her this grandiose gift, and you experience that. Is it going to be transactional? Is it going to have equitable value? So I think the narrative needs to be established well on. So we've gotten 2 tips for you today. Number 1, $50 a week, or whatever your budget can allow. If it's $30, if it's $20, if it's $50, or if it's more, that's just money that you put into a kitty, a line item in your budget. You never see it. It will come in so handy when it comes to Christmas shopping, because the stress now is taken down because you have a budget.
And I think to be non-general, I think that's also going to be very, very, very important for people with a fixed budget, someone that knows exactly what they're making from one week, month, year to the next, as opposed to somebody who maybe has a more fluid schedule, whether or not it's somebody that works
commission driven.
Yeah. So you still don't want to hurt yourself by trying to save something that is unreasonable. For me, mine floats month to month, and yours is fixed. So it's going to be a lot easier for you to say that. So again, these are ballparks, and that I think that probably would work a lot better for someone with that.
So getting back to number 1, you're right. It is find a savings plan that you can, in generalities, stick to, so that come the joy of the season, it doesn't come into disappointment of the season or stress of the season. And then the second thing, combat the narrative. Always, always, always combat the narrative with an honest conversation prior to it. Ours even had to shift. We had a shift in our narrative that needed to happen round about Thanksgiving, just knowing that a trip we were going to go on fiscally was going to cost a little bit more than what we anticipated because of airline costs and some of the costs with inflation versus whenever we planned the trip 3 months ago. So that was a shift that we needed to pivot on and say, okay, why don't we look at this, New Year's trip we're making as more of an honor to our relationship and as a gift to to each other and not have our actual gifts under the tree be quantified into that. So we had to change the narrative, but narratives can be destructive, or an open, honest conversation is always positive too. So that's the F&A show for today.
Cheers. Thanks everyone for joining.
Bye.